Chapter 3. Achilles' Dilemma.
Is this some kind of joke to you?
Zhang Hanying leaned against the detailed wooden railing between himself and a vast panorama of cliffs and peaks deep in the Daba Mountains. The morning mist filled the air with a chill thickness and cast a haze over the sheer cliffs and verdant slopes. The cliff faces all around the monastery were marked by streaks of black or gray rock, straight out of a Chinese ink-wash painting. Hanying stared at the tree roots reaching down over the temple from the overhang of packed soil and rock.
No,
Wei Ying muttered, voice full of shame. Hanying spared a glance at his younger brother and the welts on his face, a less than satisfactory repayment for the stinging bruises on Hanying's own skin. He and his brother were both clad in the white and black wool uniforms of the Heaven and Earth Society's Magician Academy. He didn't know why both of them were out here. Wei Ying had clearly instigated. Wei Ying always instigated. Hanying only ever did anything to defend himself. I don't think that's the crux of the... Hanying began.
Be silent,
Fang snapped, looming over the two boys with an aura of sternness.
You must be tired of me disciplining you. I know I am. So no matter how often I punish you, why do you two insist on fighting?
Hanying felt the cut on his cheek tingle. It had been less of a fight and more of a delusion-fueled assault. Hanying had refused to refill Wei Ying's water at the pump for him over a week ago, and Wei Ying found that act so insulting that he felt it was justified for him to break the rules of sparring and actively try to hurt Hanying. Not that he could explain that to Mr. Fang. I don't remember being the one who attacked someone with a sword. Hanying shot a look at his brother.
I don't care who started it. Why?
Hanying asked, shooting an indignant look at his instructor. Isn't the point of you mediating to dispense justice?
No, I am not mediating. I am disciplining you, Fang said. I don't care because all that matters is that you two don't fight. You have been given a very generous opportunity by the Heaven and Earth Society to be trained in the arcane arts and to put those skills to use in the service of our country. You both will be part of a combat squadron soon. In the field, if you two fight like this, people will die. You'll die.
This isn't my country, Hanying dared to murmur.
What was that?
Fang shot a glare his way.
Why are you even putting kids in military squads? Isn't that a war crime or something?
Wei Ying asked before sheepishly adding,
Sir? Don't be a smartass. You know damn well why,
Fang growled. According to the Tiandihui, other magician circles the world over had been enjoying a boom in young people breaking through Solomon's wisdom. If the Tiandihui didn't deploy their young members in combat, the other circles would outnumber them, 10-1. Fang sighed.
What boggles my mind, Wei Ying, is that you're the most gifted student we have. You completed the basic Confucian sorcery set in a month. Why do you fight with your brother over the result of a simple sparring match?
Hanying scoffed. Because he can't imagine the idea of me being better than him at anything.
No, you're just a coward. The match was over. You tried to attack me after you tapped out.
Hanying shouted.
You're a moron who won't spar with magic. I can barely use magic. And let's talk about how you had the gall to get mad at me just because I wouldn't fetch you water. What's so hard about it? That was a week ago. You're still holding that grudge.
Hanying's face twisted with anger.
I'm in the intermediate class. You're senior. You should get me water when I tell you to get me water. You shouldn't even be here.
Hanying drew back his fist. Fang put himself between the two of them.
Stop.
Hanying sighed and returned to leaning over the railing.
Look, if you two can't get yourselves under control by the end of the month, one of you is going to have to leave, Fang said. And whoever does is not going to enjoy that experience. So, to give you time to think on it, Wei Ying, after dinner, you will run to the peak of the next mountain and back before sunrise. What? Wei Ying exclaimed. But it's gonna rain tonight. Hanying, Fang turned to him, you still haven't passed the Confucian beginning set. If you don't pass, we won't have to spend time deciding on who leaves.
Hanying grimaced.
He gets to study?
Wei Ying moaned, throwing his arms around limply, as if trying to give the impression of helplessness.
That's not fair. Why doesn't he have to run?
Believe me, I'd rather run, Hanying muttered. He didn't even want to look at those books anymore. This is favoritism! Wei Ying jabbed an accusatory finger at his teacher.
I'm being more than fair.
Fang glared at him. It's because I'm a better magician than your daughter, isn't it?
What does that?
You're all just jealous! Wei Ying snarled, storming away, stomping across the stone floors. Fang sighed, shaking his head. Once Wei Ying was well out of earshot, Fang pinched his nose.
I mean, where does he get off?
My parents never really disciplined him. Would you believe me if I said he's always been that way? Han Ying sighed. Fang nodded.
Unfortunately, I think I was being fair.
Yeah, well, anything that isn't exactly what he wants is unfair. Han Ying's weak smile vanished. Fang leaned against the railing with Han Ying.
I ought to record him next time he has an outburst. Show High Command their star prodigy is an asshole, since they seem eager to take his word over mine.
He only acts that way when he thinks he can get away with it, Han Ying scoffed.
He's a hard worker, nonetheless. Just equally hard to work with.
Fang gave Han Ying a side-eyed glance.
I'm serious about the punishment, by the way. You really need to pass that beginning set.
I don't know what to tell you, sir, Han Ying shrugged. I just wasn't made for civic sorcery. I'm good at the martial stuff.
You can't confine yourself to only what you're good at, Han Ying. Only by holding yourself to a standard that makes you push yourself will you improve. Otherwise, you'll lose control over even what you're good at.
I know that, sir, he sighed. I just don't... Mr. Fang's stone face was starting to come back. I'll try harder, sir, he muttered, dreading this evening. If it means making Wei Ying shut up. Fang shook his head.
If you let him drag you down to his level, you'll know better than him. Let go of all this with your brother. Don't let it stop your growth as a magician or a martial artist. I'm his master. Leave him to me.
Han Ying grimaced. Yes, sir. Henry's eyes flickered open. The last vestiges of his breath escaped his throat and bubbled up to the surface. He thrashed around through the rushing water as he tried to pull himself up towards a light. His head broke through the surface, and a breath of fresh air filled his lungs. The several feet he'd been submerged in had been replaced by a riverbed. The water barely rose above his ankles as he sat. But the stream was wide, surrounded by a large bank of stones and silt. Steep mountains covered in short grass rose high enough to vanish into the thick fog that had settled over the river. The bends of the gorge twisted around the mountains as if a giant snake had burrowed through the rock. His head was foggy, a jumble of fighting, explosions, and, well, not much else. How did he get here? That was a useless question, since he couldn't even answer where he'd come from. The silt banks of the river faded into soil, meeting a sharp border between the mountains and a massive field of wild golden grains stretching as far as he could see. A setting, or maybe rising, sun cast the meadow and sky in brilliant colors. But the moment they reached the mountain mist, each ray of sunlight was reflected and scattered into an ambient glow amongst the fog. The grandiose size of everything around him filled his chest with a sense of expanding wonder. His gaze was drawn by the crunch of sediment under hooves. He glanced at the bank of the river, spotting a man on horseback. The rider's bronze Corinthian helmet shrouded his face, with a crimson plume and detailing resembling a ram's horns on its sides. The horse itself had a coat of jet silk, with a leopard skin draped over its back in place of a saddle. The rider was outfitted with iron armor, wielding a spear longer than even a Chinese qiang. But it was his shield that revealed his identity. The bronze-coated aegis depicted a Macedonian sunburst. Henry's eyes widened as the rider's horse walked past him. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice echoing in the gorge. The rider continued on. Not knowing what else to do, Henry clambered to his feet and waded to the bank of the river. Fog seeped in around them as he broke into a jog towards the horse so as not to lose the rider in the mist. But as he picked up the pace, the fog seemed to be more intent on obscuring the man in the haze. He broke into a sprint, only for the mist to wrap around him, completely blocking his vision. Henry's face slammed into a sheet of bronze. His butt hitting the silt, he collapsed with a grunt. He cursed, looking up at the Macedonian soldier staring down at him. The horse had seemingly vanished. "What the hell is going on here?" Henry grumbled, getting to his feet. The soldier stabbed his spear into the ground, eliciting a flinch from Henry. The bronze-clad man drew a curved sword from his hip, a kopis. He raised the weapon as it began to glow with a vibrant golden light. A wave like sunlight pushed the fog back, revealing more gorge and something really strange. Smooth as glass, some kind of massive wall blocked the gorge, rising into the sky beyond what Henry could see. The wall shined either from some kind of metal or wetness of stone. "Jesus Christ," Henry muttered. Engraved in the wall were two massive inscriptions in Syriac, if he was reading it right. Syriac script was close enough to Arabic that he could understand it. It was two words: Yajuj and Majuj, Gog and Magog. The last time Henry had read the Book of Revelations, a weird bit of required reading for his profession, he'd taken note of those names. They were cannibal tribes and enemies of the Israelites, who were supposedly the forerunners and heralds of the apocalypse. The rider sheathed his sword and began to approach the wall. Henry, unsure of what else to do, tentatively followed. The closer he got to the wall, the more detail revealed itself on its seemingly smooth surface. Every inch was covered in nearly microscopic script, but the letters kept shifting every second between different variations of Semitic languages: cuneiform, Greek, some Minoan scripts that hadn't been deciphered yet, and plenty of other ancient writing systems. As he and the soldier approached the massive wall, Henry noticed that it was not, in fact, a wall. Rather, a small line ran straight down the center of the edifice, dividing it into a gate, and it was slightly ajar. On the ground at the small opening, something dark and ambiguous seemed to be leaking out, swirling and tangling itself around Henry's ankle. He took a step back, realizing he was looking at nothing. He looked at the soldier, whose gaze was obscured by his helmet, but solely focused on the gate. At his own risk, Henry moved to peer into the gap, but the rider put a gauntleted hand on his shoulder, stopping him. "What lies beyond is still contained, and better not thought of at all," the rider said. "Stare into the abyss, and it will do more than stare back. It will follow you. It will know you. But the fortune you seek lies there, in the void." "What do you mean?" Henry asked. The soldier presented an ultimatum. "Glance at the truth, and seek the king of conquerors, or step away and be conquered. There is shame in neither, but glory in one." Henry furrowed his brow at the rider. Was this the coin's magic? Was it someone else? But the thought dominating his mind was simple and unquestioning. "Achilles was offered this choice, if I remember correctly," he said, his voice grave as he stared at the crack in the gate. "Live a long life of obscurity, or die with honor." The soldier nodded, solemn in his demeanor. "What I offer is not a glorious death, followed by relief, but a future of strife and a legacy of honor." "A future of strife," Henry grimaced. "Well, I don't have much of a peaceful life to lose, do I?" He stepped forward and peered into the void behind the gate. What he saw was nothing. Wisps of shadow, abstract in its form, like an idea trying to manifest itself into material. And a pair of eyes, shining, brilliant eyes, full of cold, white light staring at him. "Let go." His eyes snapped open. Henry smacked his head against an aluminum bar, sending him straight back into the cheap, sweat-soaked pillow he'd just torn himself from. He heaved through the pain, clutching his forehead. Images of his dreams started to fade away as ringing shook his skull. "Son of a bitch!" he hissed. When the pain wore off, he sat up, maneuvering around the metal this time. He swung his legs to the side of an aluminum bunk bed, one of 8 in this room. Sunlight streamed through the blinds at each window, making patches of illumination in the mostly dark room. The popcorn ceiling was at least 12 feet high, and each bed had a set of lockers next to it. Henry tossed a thin sheet off himself and stood, expanding his body with a stretch. As he took a few steps in place, he was surprised to find no noticeable injuries. Hadn't he been hit by a grenade? No, it was a bomb. His bomb. That was embarrassing, to say the least. Maybe he was dead? Though he seriously doubted heaven or hell would look like a hostel dorm. Just to make sure, he stumbled to the ensuite bathroom, which smelled of a recent shower, and stared at himself in the mirror over the tiny sink. He was covered in scars and a few bruises, but nothing major. What the hell? He muttered to himself, voice scraping against the dry, sore, mucus-ridden mess that was his throat. With a blast like the one he remembered, his entire front side should have been lacerated and scorched. Someone must have done something. He looked at the faucet below him and had an impulse to drink from it, but he had no idea where he was. If he was still in Morocco, he'd best wait for bottled water. With a sigh and some exertion, Henry left the bathroom and headed for the door. He opened it to a brightly lit hub between his room and half a dozen rooms just like it, with some kind of absurdly smooth stone on the floor that felt good on his bare feet. He'd bother with shoes later. He squinted in the glow of the skylight overhead and followed the stone walls towards a stairwell, nearly bumping into a waist-high potted plant on the way. He made his way down the stairs and around a corner to a set of windows facing a stone brick street. Across from them was a front desk, and the words, "Lol Hostel" on it. In spite of the name, Henry sighed in relief. "Long night, huh?" The guy working the desk grinned knowingly at him. Henry nodded slightly before heading past the desk and into the hostel's common area. Were he not injured or running from... Well, it had to be 2 magician circles now. He would have definitely stayed at a place like this. He'd always had an architectural soft spot for stone brick, so seeing the long wall that extended from the left of the front desk all the way to the bar put him at ease. The common room was filled with brightly colored beanbags and plush chairs, including a sofa in front of a television. Along the edge of the room there were several desktop computers, lined up like in a school library. Somewhat random decor, such as metal beams and a weirdly ornate mirror, dotted the stone wall, and the lights hanging off of the ceiling cast everything untouched by the sun in a warm glow. "You're awake?" Henry glanced behind him at the circular table in the corner between the front desk and the common area. "I figured that blast would have put you down for at least a week." Sitting at it was a girl no older than he was, looking up from a laptop. She was willowy in almost every feature, with shoulder-length curly brown hair and slightly sun-tanned skin. She wore a tight-fitting, multicolored dress that really screamed on vacation, but suited the unassuming facade she put forward. It took Henry a good minute, but he slowly started to recognize her. "Annalise," he muttered. "Good to see you again, Henry." Annalisa Abt, or Annalise, was an old contact from his days in the Heaven and Earth Society, being willing to betray the Palatine Order of Cologne. Henry would often correspond with her for information as Jow Squad's representative, and she wasn't the one who had intervened in Volubilis. "What do you mean a week? How long has it been?" Henry got to the real crux of his concerns. "How did I get here? What?" Annalise held up a finger, silencing him. "Let's slow down. Sit and relax first." She gestured to a chair next to her with a thin hand. "It's a rare opportunity." Henry gave her a look of disapproval, but sat down to alleviate his, frankly, exhausted body. Leaning on the table, he asked, "Where are we?" "Syracuse, Sicily." Henry squeezed his eyes shut. He was in the Coven of Latium's territory. Annalise had betrayed the Germans to defect to the Latins. Of course. He'd been caught. "It's not what you think," she said, reading his dismayed expression. "I'm not with the Latins." Henry furrowed his brow. "It's a long story." "So who are you working for?" Henry asked. Annalise frowned. "Hey, I don't always have to work for someone. I'm working with someone." "Yeah? Who?" "I don't see how that's any of your business right now." She grimaced, so either she didn't know or she had a reason to keep the information from him. "Working with my ass," he scoffed. "You should be thanking me. I watched over you for 2 days. 2 days? Henry sighed, trying to convince himself that it wasn't so bad. I had a coin. And my weapons. Where are my... You had your short swords on you, but that's about it, Annalise said. Henry noticed a violet cloth wrap next to her laptop. He reached for it, but she slid it away from him. Not a chance. I know what this is. Annalise. Henry tilted his head, letting a stressed grin creep onto his face. Don't do this. I don't want to cause a scene. Then don't, she said, nonchalantly. You'll get it back once I'm done with it. Did she expect him to believe that? That she wouldn't spike his drink with some paralysis concoction or charm him into a deep sleep before running off? But in spite of his threats, he was in no position to take the coin by force. Even if he overcame his exhaustion, Annalise could alarm the people he'd just stolen the coin from in a heartbeat. Henry squeezed his eyes shut and sighed. He might as well try to play nice, for now. All right, he muttered. At least he knew where the coin was. Then can you tell me how I got here from Morocco? Annalise chuckled, lounging back in her chair. You were already dozing off upstairs when I got here. My partner said that you were the newest addition to our team. I'm what? You're getting recruited, she shrugged. It's a smart choice. You're good at what you do, but you need a linguist like myself. She unwrapped only part of the coin, allowing the wrap's magical suppression to continue working. Look closely. There's a riddle here in ancient Greek. You'll need my help. Henry peered at the coin. Indeed, there was ancient Greek scrawled on the edge, surrounding an image of some temple. He sat back in his chair. You're not the only one in the world who knows ancient Greek. Why would I need your help? Because my partner and I already know where to go next. Annalise pulled out her phone and showed him a screenshot of a news article. The headline read, Wealthy Medici descendant to host fundraiser for National Archaeological Institute. The photo was of a young Italian man proudly showing the camera a collection of artifacts. Annalise tapped her finger on the table next to her phone. This fundraiser is a cover for a big party with the magician circles who want to hunt for the tomb. I don't know how, but your little scuffle in Morocco caused a different coin to fall into the coven's hands. The Latins have had a rough go of it recently. The Japanese managed to intercept their communications about their biggest lead, which I assume is the information that got into your hands. Calling that a loss of face is an understatement. You and Zhao Squad jumping them in Morocco was the straw that broke the camel's back, I guess. They intend to release the clues on the tomb to all interested parties as a sign of good sportsmanship. Henry's eyes widened. Which means every magician circle with resources and manpower will have the first step on a silver platter. So people like us will be locked out of the competition. Annalise nodded. Exactly. But the coven is going to keep the coin, and that's the only part that really matters. Henry glanced at his coin sitting on the table. What do you mean? These coins aren't identical. Each of them has different writing and different images, Annalise said, flipping the coin over while still having it touch the violet wrapping. What tipped me off was this side. The proverbial heads side of the coin had two profiles of men facing one another. Henry's Greek was poor, but he could still sound out names. On the edges, the leftmost face had the marker of Achilles. The right face was named Ptolemy. The Latin coin had someone else on it. The image was kind of small, but I think it was Lysimachus. The coins are a set. One for each of Alexander's heirs, the Diadochi. Henry voiced his epiphany as it came to him. He sat up. Why are you telling me all this? I could take this information right now and leave. Annalise smirked. Oh, and what exactly do you plan to do with that information? You have no connections to draw on except me, and you aren't exactly famous for your ability to pull heists. You want to steal it? Henry furrowed his brow. From under the noses of that many magicians? Well, they aren't selling it, she scoffed. My partner wants to meet us in Athens. She has a plan to get the coin. What does your partner want with the tomb? Henry asked. What do you want with it? I can't answer that first one, but at the very least she sounds inexperienced. If it were to come down to it, Annalise said. As for the second one, let's just say I think it would be really stupid for one circle to get all of that ancient magic for themselves. I'll consider going into specifics if we have a deal. Better you than them, huh? Henry huffed. You're really strong-arming me here. That's kind of the point, Zhang. You're stubborn, but you're not stupid. Trying to do this alone would be suicide. Annalise smirked.
But if it's any consolation, better me and my partner than your old squad and the Tiandi Hui, right?
Henry grimaced. That was part of what he was here for. To make them realize the mistake they made in making an enemy out of him. Besides, it wasn't the first time he'd worked with people he didn't trust. Fine, he sighed. But I have a logistical issue. A good chunk of my money was in Morocco. So right now, aside from a $400 pair of butterfly swords, I'm flat broke.
I figured as much.
Annalise sighed.
I'm not overflowing with cash myself, so there's one thing you'll have to help me with. I have a job with the Egyptians I have to deliver on.
The Egyptians? Aren't they our competition? I figured they'd be hot contenders for Alexander the Great. We should avoid them. Henry furrowed his brow. Annalise wrapped the coin back up in its purple cloth and golden thread.
Well, they're the only source of quick cash we have. If you'd like to go beg for a ferry ticket and try to win a shootout with one of your toy knives, be my guest. I, personally, have an affinity for firearms. Expensive, untraceable firearms.